That morning, no one expected a single act of defiance to change military history. What began as routine training became a moment every soldier on base would remember, and one that would test the difference between following orders and doing what's right. The sun crested the horizon over Coronado Naval Base, casting long shadows across the training grounds. The air carried the sharp tang of salt from the Pacific, mingling with the faint diesel hum of idling Humvees. Petty Officer First Class Elena Vasquez stood at attention in formation, her boots planted firmly on the dew-slicked asphalt. At 28, she was one of the few women in SEAL Team 7's elite cadre, her frame lean and disciplined from years of buds hell and deployments that blurred into one endless rhythm of vigilance. Beside her, Rex, her Belgian Malinois canine partner, sat rigid, his black mask alert, ears pricked forward. The dog's harness gleamed under the early light, the leather worn smooth from countless patrols. "Platoon, attention!" The command echoed from Master Chief Harlan Reyes, his voice cutting through the morning chill like a Ka-bar blade. Reyes was a fixture in the unit, 30 years in, face etched with lines from too many sandstorms in Iraq and Afghanistan. His eyes scanned the ranks, pausing briefly on Elena and Rex. She felt the weight of that gaze, not hostile, but appraising. Women in SEALs were still proving ground, every mission a referendum on their place in the hierarchy. The platoon snapped to, 70 operators in crisp utilities, rifles slung at low ready. This was EOD Familiarization Day, explosive ordnance disposal drills, the kind that sharpened instincts against hidden threats. No live rounds, just simulations, buried mock IEDs, signal jammers to mimic insurgent tech. Elena's role was straightforward, handler and scout. Rex wasn't just a dog, he was her extension, trained to detect electronics, chemicals, even the faint electromagnetic pulse of a radio transmitter. Their bond had formed in the humid nights of a forward operating base in Syria, where Rex's nose had pulled her from an ambush that claimed 2 others. "Objective! Clear the perimeter!" Reyes barked, pointing to the mock village ahead, a cluster of plywood structures ringed by concertina wire. "Vasquez, you and Rex take point on signal sweep. Report anomalies immediately. No freelancing." "Aye, Master Chief," Elena replied, her voice steady, clipped. She gave Rex the hand signal forward, and he moved out, his paws silent on the gravel. The platoon fanned into teams, boots crunching in unison, the only sound besides the distant rotor wash of a Blackhawk on approach. Elena's pulse thrummed with the familiar tension, not fear, but focus. In the teams, hesitation killed, loyalty to the man or dog beside you kept you alive. They advanced methodically, section by section. Rex's nose worked the air, nostrils flaring at the phantom sense of simulated threats. Elena followed, her M4 carbine at the ready, scanning for tripwires or infrared beacons. The desert wind picked up, whispering through the chain-link fences, carrying the metallic bite of the ocean. Halfway through the village mock-up, Rex stiffened, a low rumble building in his throat, not a bark, but a warning only she could read. "Contact," she murmured into her radio, keeping formation. "Possible electronic signature, bearing 045. Reyes' voice crackled back. "Confirm and hold. Team 2, flank left." Elena knelt beside Rex, her gloved hand steadying his flank. He pawed at a loose panel in the plywood wall, insistent. She swept her detector, a handheld SIGINT device, over the spot. The screen flickered. Faint RF signal, encrypted, pulsing like a heartbeat. Not part of the drill. This was real. Someone had planted an unauthorized transmitter, maybe a test from Intel, or worse, a breach. "Master Chief, it's active, not sim gear," she reported, her tone level despite the adrenaline spiking her veins. Static. Then Reyes. "Stand down, Vasquez. Pull back. This just got classified." But Rex wouldn't disengage, whining softly. Pressing his nose to the panel, Elena's instinct screamed to uncover it, track the signal before it vanished. Orders were clear, though: report and wait. She hesitated, fingers hovering over the latch. In the team's chain of command was oxygen. Defying it could end a career. Yet something in Rex's eyes, that unyielding trust, pulled at her. They'd saved each other before. What if this signal was a prelude to something bigger, a leak that could endanger the whole platoon? The platoon held position 20 meters back, murmurs rippling through the ranks. Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Hale, the base's operations officer, had arrived unannounced, his staff car crunching to a halt at the perimeter. Hale was old-school brass, promoted from Delta. All sharp salutes and zero tolerance for improvisation. He strode forward, uniform impeccable, aviators glinting in the sun. "Vasquez," Hale called, his voice carrying authority like a rifle report. "Report." She rose, Rex at heel, and double-timed to him. "Sir, Rex detected an active RF transmitter embedded in the structure. Origin unknown. Detector confirms it's broadcasting." Hale's jaw tightened, glancing at the panel. "Drills over. Secure the site. No one touches it until EOD clears." "Aye, sir." But as she turned, Rex strained against his leash, hackles up. The signal was moving, faint, but shifting frequency. Elena's mind raced. If it was enemy tech, slipping away now meant losing the trace. Duty said obey. Her conscience, forged in the quiet aftermath of lost missions, said act. Hale's eyes narrowed. "Petty officer, you have your orders?" She nodded, but her hand slipped to her belt pouch, palming a micro-tracker, just in case. The wind gusted again, stirring dust around their boots, and in that moment the routine fractured. Whispers spread. Was this a setup? A test for her, the woman handler with the wonder dog? Elena felt the eyes on her, Reyes watchful, Hale expectant. Rex sat still now, but his gaze locked on hers, patient, ready. Back at the assembly point, as the platoon debriefed under the canvas awning, Hale pulled her aside. The air hummed with the low chatter of after-action reviews, coffee steaming in MRE cups. "Vasquez, you're off this case," the colonel barked, his tone brooking no argument. "Intel's taking over. Your involvement ends here." "Sir, with respect, Rex and I can—" "No!" Hale's stare was steel. "Chain of command, dismissed." Elena saluted, crisp and formal, but as she walked away, Rex's ears flicked toward the horizon. The signal pulsed in her mind, a ghost in the static. She wasn't done. Not yet. The base stirred around them, trucks rumbling, a distant bugle call. But inside, the defiance took root, quiet as a dog's breath in the dark. Eleanor clipped Rex's leash shorter as they moved away from the assembly point, the gravel crunching under her boots like brittle bones. The morning briefing dragged on behind her, Reyes's voice rising and falling in measured tones, dissecting the drill's anomalies without mentioning the real signal. She could feel Hale's gaze boring into her back, a silent warning etched in the colonel's rigid posture. The air thickened with the scent of damp earth and machine oil, the Pacific salt lingering like an unspoken promise of isolation. Back in the kennel block, a low-slung concrete bunker on the edge of the training fields, Elena secured Rex in his run. The space was Spartan. Wire mesh partitions, water bowls echoing with drips, the faint musk of fur and kibble. Rex paced once, then settled, his dark eyes following her every move. She knelt, running a gloved hand along his flank, feeling the steady rise and fall of his ribs. "Easy, boy," she murmured, her voice a thread in the quiet. Their bond wasn't words, it was rhythm. Years of synchronized breaths in the dead of night, his nose cutting through fog where tech failed. She pulled the micro-tracker from her pouch, a palm-sized device no bigger than a field dressing, its screen glowing faintly with the signal's last coordinates. Hale's order echoed in her mind, off the case. Intel would handle it, faceless analysts in air-conditioned trailers, sifting data without the ground truth. But Rex had locked on that frequency, a subtle shift that spoke of movement, perhaps a drone relay or a sleeper cell's beacon. Ignoring it felt like abandoning a wounded teammate, the kind of choice that haunted deployments. Elena glanced at her watch. 9:30 hours. Debrief would wrap soon, then PT, physical training to burn off the adrenaline. She had a window, maybe 30 minutes before Reyes called roll. Slipping the tracker into her utilities cargo pocket, she stepped out, locking the kennel door with a metallic click. The base hummed around her, a maintenance crew welding nearby, sparks arcing like fireflies, the distant thump of rotor blades as a helo lifted off from the pad. She moved with purpose, blending into the foot traffic, operators heading to the chow hall, a supply truck idling with its canvas flap stirring in the breeze. Her quarters were in the enlisted barracks, a third-floor walk-up overlooking the grinder. Inside, the room was regulation tidy, bunk made with hospital corners, locker stowed with folded fatigues. A single photo taped to the mirror, her and Rex on a dusty trail in Kandahar, his tongue lolling in rare play. She booted her secure laptop, the fan whirring softly as it linked to the base network. No direct access to the signal logs. That was locked down. But the micro-tracker synced via Bluetooth, plotting the pulse on a rudimentary map. It was heading east, faint but persistent, skirting the base perimeter toward the scrubland beyond. Moral tension coiled in her gut, tight as a rigger's knot. SEAL ethos drilled obedience into the marrow. Follow orders, protect the team. Defying Hale risked everything. Demotion, reassignment, the end of her role with Rex. They'd paired her with him after Bud S, when doubt still shadowed women in the pipeline. Losing that trust could unravel years of proving herself. Yet the signal nagged, a whisper of vulnerability. What if it was tied to the unit's next rotation? A leak like that could turn routine patrols into kill zones. She grabbed her go bag, essentials only, water, compass, a spare battery for the tracker, and headed out. No radio chatter. This was off books. Rex needed to come. His nose could confirm what the device only hinted at. Back at the kennels, she signed him out under a vague handler maintenance log, her signature steady despite the pulse in her temples. Reyes was tied up in the OIC's office, hashing out the incident with Hale. No eyes on her yet. They slipped through a service gate, the chain link rattling softly as it swung shut. The scrubland stretched ahead, a buffer zone of dry grass and eucalyptus, the ocean's roar muted by dunes. Rex moved at heel, his paws silent on the packed earth, nostrils working the wind. Eleanor kept low, scanning for patrols. MPs in their Tahoes, routine sweeps. The tracker beeped once, a vibration against her thigh, signal strengthening, bearing 080. 200 meters in, Rex alerted, body rigid, a soft chuff escaping his muzzle. She knelt, unclipping his leash. "Track!" she commanded, voice barely above the wind's hush. He bounded forward, weaving through the brush, Eleanor trailing with her carbine slung, the terrain roughened, rocks jutting like broken teeth, the air sharpening with sage and sun-baked soil. Sweat beaded under her collar, the utilities chafing against her skin. At a dry wash, Rex circled, pawing at a cluster of boulders. Elena swept the area, her detector confirming. The signal originated here, embedded in a rock crevice, a small black box, no bigger than a grenade, its antenna disguised as a twig. She didn't touch it. Protocol demanded EOD. Instead, she photographed it with her phone, noting the faint etchings. Cyrillic script, faded but unmistakable. Russian tech, smuggled in for espionage, or a black market toy gone wrong? Rex whined, pressing close, his warmth an anchor against the chill of realization. This wasn't a drill glitch. It was a breach, potentially foreign. Hale's intel team might bury it for optics, but lives hung on tracing the source. Her fingers itched to extract it, but extraction meant exposure. She planted a secondary beacon on a nearby stone, linked to her tracker, then signaled Rex to withdraw. As they retraced their steps, a Humvee engine growled in the distance, tires kicking dust along the perimeter road. Elena froze, pulling Rex into cover. The vehicle slowed, an MP scanning the fence line. Her heart hammered, not from fear, but the weight of the line she'd crossed. Obedience was the team's spine. This was a fracture. Back inside the wire, she returned Rex to his run, his tail giving a single wag of shared secret. The base clock ticked toward noon, the sun climbing to bake the asphalt. In the chow line later, Reyes caught her eye across the mess deck, his expression unreadable amid the clatter of trays and low murmurs. "Vasquez," he said quietly as she passed, steam rising from her tray of MRE-grade chili. "Hale's asking questions. Stay frosty." "Aye, Master Chief," she replied, meeting his gaze level. No confession, just the quiet resolve that bound handlers to their charges. The signal's trace burned in her pocket, a defiant pulse against the rigid order of ranks. Outside, the wind carried the faint cry of gulls, and Elena knew the reckoning was coming, slow, inevitable as the tide. The afternoon sun beat down on the grinder like a relentless interrogator, turning the asphalt into a shimmering haze. Elena stood at ease during the unit's mandatory formation, her utilities clinging damply to her skin from the post-chow PT session. Push-ups and sprints that left her muscles humming with controlled burn. Rex was back in the kennels, under the watchful eye of the handler rotation, his absence a subtle ache, like a missing limb. The platoon formed up in 3 ranks, rifles at sling arms, the air thick with the scent of sweat-soaked canvas and the faint, acrid tang of gun oil from morning quals. Master Chief Reyes paced the front, his boots marking time with precise thuds. "Listen up," he said, voice gravel rough from years of issuing commands over rotor noise. "Incident from this morning's drill is under review. No speculation. Focus on your lanes." His eyes swept the formation, lingering on Elena a beat longer than the rest. She held her gaze forward, chin level, the micro-tracker's weight in her pocket, a secret pressure against her thigh. The device she'd planted was syncing data now, intermittent pings plotting the signal's origin, feeding her laptop in encrypted bursts. Lieutenant Colonel Hale appeared at the edge of the formation, flanked by 2 intel officers in starched khakis, clipboards in hand. The colonel's presence rippled through the ranks like a pressure wave, operators straightening imperceptibly, murmurs dying to silence. Hale's face was a mask of controlled authority, the lines around his mouth deepened by the glare. He nodded to Reyes, then addressed the platoon directly. "At ease. This morning's anomaly has been escalated. EOD confirmed foreign tech, potential compromise. Until cleared, all personnel are restricted to base. Report any irregularities immediately." Elena felt the collective shift, a tightening in the air, as if the whole unit held its breath. Her mind raced. The Cyrillic markings on the box matched nothing in standard SIM kits. If it was state-sponsored, Russian, Iranian, it could point to a probe on SEAL rotations, intel on upcoming deployments. Hale's eyes found her then, pinning her in place. Vasquez, front and center. She double-timed forward, stopping 2 paces from him, saluting sharply. "Sir." The intel officers flanked him, one jotting notes, the other holding a tablet with signal schematics, grainy images from the site sweep. Hale's voice was low, for her ears and theirs alone, but the formation's proximity made it feel exposed. "You were first on the detection. Walk me through it again. Every detail." "Aye, sir. Rex alerted at the plywood structure, 045 from entry point. Detector confirmed RF pulse. Encrypted, non-standard. I reported and held as ordered." She kept her tone even, facts only, no inflection to betray the omission. The wind off the bay stirred. carrying the distant bark of training dogs, a reminder of Rex's unerring instinct. Hale leaned in slightly, his aviators reflecting her face back at her, composed, unyielding. "And after stand down, where were you between 09:30 and 11:30? Eleanor's pulse quickened, a steady drum against her ribs, but she didn't flinch. "Secured Rex in kennels, then PT prep, sir. Logged handler maintenance." The lie sat heavy, procedural and practiced, but her conscience twisted it like a bad sling. Reyes had covered for her implicitly, no questions in the chow line, but Hale's scrutiny peeled back layers, searching for cracks in the chain. The senior intel officer, a wiry major with a buzz cut, interjected, "Logs check out, Colonel, but the signal's trace went cold after initial sweep. If it's mobile, we need ground assets." His gaze flicked to Eleanor, appraising. "Handler and K9 could provide redundancy." Hale's jaw clenched, a muscle ticking under the skin. "Negative. Vasquez is recused. Intel leads." He turned back to her, voice dropping to a command whisper. "Petty officer, if I find you've gone rogue on this, it's not just your career. It's the team's. Dismissed." She saluted again, pivoting on her heel with mechanical precision, the formation's eyes tracking her return to ranks. Whispers stirred in her wake, subtle, like radio static. "Woman's got balls," from a junior operator, a low chuckle cut short by Reyes's glare. Back in line, Elena's hands clasped behind her, fingers flexing against the urge to check the tracker. Duty demanded silence, morality. Forged in the quiet losses of patrols, where signals like this had spelled doom, demanded pursuit. Debrief dragged into the evening, the ops center a dimly lit warren of folding tables and glowing screens under fluorescent hum. Elena sat at the periphery, nursing a black coffee that tasted of burnt grounds, as Hale and the intel team dissected the find. Rex's input was referenced, his alert praised in passing, but her role minimized, reduced to initial detection. The signal's profile emerged, low-power burst transmitter, likely a relay for drone surveillance or cell activation. No immediate threat, but the implications lingered, eyes on the base, probing for weaknesses. As the meeting broke, Reyes pulled her into the corridor, the door clicking shut behind them. The hallway smelled of stale air and printer ink, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. "What the hell, Vasquez?" he said, voice pitched low, eyes hard but not unkind. "Hale's smelling something off. You tracking that thing solo?" She met his gaze, the bond of shared deployments a bridge over the gap. "Master Chief, Rex locked on it. If it's moving, Intel's desk work won't cut it. Lives on the line. Our rotation's next." Reyes rubbed his jaw, the stubble rasping under his palm. "Chain of command isn't optional. You're good, kid. Best handler we've got since '08. But this, it's a court-martial waiting." He paused, glancing down the empty hall, where a janitor's mop sloshed faintly. "If you're in, I'm not blind, but cover your six." D. The concession hung between them, a quiet pact born of loyalty deeper than orders. Elena nodded, the weight lifting fractionally. "Aye, sir. For the team." Night fell over Coronado, the base lights pooling like spilled mercury on the wet pavement from a brief evening shower. In her quarters, Elena synced the tracker fully, the laptop screen casting blue shadows on her face. The beacon she'd planted pulsed. The signal had jumped, heading inland toward the hills, evading the official sweep. Rex slept in the adjacent handler bay, his breaths even through the vent. She stroked his ear once, the fur warm and familiar, a tether to conscience. But as she plotted the next move, off-base recon at dawn, under civilian cover, the moral fracture widened. Hale's warning echoed, a reminder of the institution's rigid spine. Defiance could redeem, expose the breach and save the platoon, or shatter her place, leaving Rex to another handler. The rain pattered against the window, soft as suppressed fire, and Eleanor lay awake, the tracker's glow a defiant beacon in the dark. The cost of integrity pressed in, silent as a dog's watchful vigil, as the base settled into uneasy rest. Comment where you're watching from. I want to know how far stories of courage and integrity can reach. Dawn broke over Coronado with a muted grey light, the kind that seeped through fog rolling in from the bay, muting the base's sharp edges. Elena Vasquez moved through the pre-reveille quiet, her civilian clothes, a faded hoodie and jeans, feeling foreign against her skin after years in utilities. Rex padded at her heel, his harness swapped for a low-profile vest, the leather still carrying the faint scent of kennel straw. She'd logged him out at 500 under extended training, a stretch even Reyes might question, but the Master Chief's nod in the dim ops hallway the night before had bought her this sliver of time. The micro-tracker vibrated in her pocket as she slipped through the east gate, flashing her ID to the sleepy MP with a casual, off-duty hike. The scrubland welcomed them back, the air crisp with eucalyptus and the underlying rot of tidal flats. No rifle today, just a concealed sidearm under her jacket. Protocol be damned. The signal's trace had stabilized overnight. The beacon she'd planted feeding coordinates 3 clicks inland, toward the rugged hills where the base's buffer zone blurred into public land. Eleanor's breath came even, measured, as Rex took point, his nose cutting the mist like a blade. They pushed steady, boots silent on the dew-wet trail, the only sounds the rustle of brush and Rex's occasional huff. Elena's mind replayed Hale's words from the formation. "If I find you've gone rogue." The colonel's authority wasn't bluster. It was the weight of command that held platoons together in the suck. Defying it chipped at that foundation, a risk that could cascade, reprimands turning to inquiries, her spot in Team 7 evaporating like fog under sun. Yet the signal's pulse on her wrist-mounted display urged her forward, a rhythmic insistence. Rex had detected it first, his loyalty unclouded by ranks or reports. To pull back now felt like betrayal, the kind that echoed in the empty bunks of fallen operators. At the 1-click mark, the terrain steepened, loose shale sliding underfoot like spent casings. Elena paused at a ridge overlook, scanning with binoculars. The hills rolled toward San Diego's outskirts, dotted with hiking trails and the occasional ranger truck. No overt threats, but the fog clung, veiling potential watchers. She fed Rex a hand signal, scent cone, and he quartered the ground, paws kicking up faint dust. The tracker beeped. Signal origin, bearing 090, distance 800 meters. Elena's pulse steadied. This was handler work, pure and procedural, the bond with Rex a counterweight to the isolation of her choice. They crested the ridge, descending into a narrow arroyo where the signal spiked. Rex alerted hard, body coiling like a spring, a low growl vibrating through his chest. Elena knelt, sweeping the area, amid a tangle of manzanita. The black box from the mock village, or its twin, sat wedged in a crevice, antenna extended like a scorpion's tail. But this one hummed actively, its casing warm to the touch through her glove. Cyrillic etchings again, but now she spotted a faint LED blink. Data transfer in progress. She didn't extract it. Instead, she synced her tracker directly, downloading the burst. Fragmented code, coordinates pointing further east, toward urban sprawl. "Rex, sit!" she whispered, her hand firm on his collar as he strained toward the device. The dog's eyes met hers, patient intensity mirroring her resolve. In that moment, the moral line blurred further. Obedience to Hale meant letting intel chase shadows. Following her conscience meant piecing the puzzle herself, potentially averting a breach that could shadow the team's next op. Sweat traced her spine despite the chill, the hoodie dampening at the small of her back. Voices echoed from the trail above, hikers, civilian chatter cutting the silence like stray rounds. Elena pulled Rex into cover, heart sinking in the weight. Two locals passed, packs rustling, oblivious to the shadow play below. Once clear, she marked the site with a GPS pin, then withdrew, the downloaded data burning in her device like contraband. The return trek felt heavier, the fog lifting to reveal the base's perimeter fence glinting in the rising sun. Elena's thoughts turned to repercussions. If Hale's team found this secondary site empty, questions would mount. Reyes's cover could only stretch so far. Back inside the wire by Zoo 730, she stowed Rex in the kennels, his tail thumping once against the concrete in quiet approval. The base stirred to life. Trucks revving for morning convoys, the sharp crack of PT formations echoing from the grinder. Elena changed in her quarters, utilities snapping into place like armor, then headed to the ops center for the daily brief. The room buzzed with restrained energy, screens flickering with sat imagery, coffee pots gurgling on side tables, the air laced with ink and stale donuts. Hale was already there, map spread before him, the intel major at his elbow. Reyes stood nearby, arms crossed, his presence a steady anchor. As Elena entered, saluting crisply, Hale's gaze snapped to her, sharp, assessing. "Vasquez, sitrep on Rex. Any anomalies overnight?" "All clear, sir," she replied, taking a seat at the edge of the table, her voice level as a horizon. The downloaded data sat encrypted on a thumb drive in her boot, invisible but insistent. No mention of the Arroyo. That would come later, framed as team intel. The brief unfolded methodically. EOD's analysis of the initial find confirmed non-U.S. origin, likely commercial spy gear, but the encryption suggested state ties. Hale traced a finger along the perimeter map. Signal went dark after 2200. We're widening the sweep. Drones at 1000 hours. His eyes lingered on her again, probing. Handlers on standby. No independent action. "Aye, sir," Elena nodded, the words tasting of half-truth. Reyes caught her eye across the table, a fractional tilt of his head. "Stay the course, but tread light." As the meeting broke, the major approached her, tablet in hand. "Petty officer, your K-9's detection was key. If you recall any off-script details from the drill." His tone was neutral, procedural, but the invitation hung. "Nothing beyond the report, sir," she said, meeting his gaze steadily. The Arroyo's coordinates itched in her mind, a map to potential escalation, perhaps a network of relays, eyes on the base's comings and goings. Sharing now meant compliance, but incomplete. Her solo track had filled gaps intel might miss. Outside, the sun climbed, baking the tarmac as operators dispersed to lanes. Elena fell in with her squad for weapons maintenance, the rhythmic clack of cleaning rods a meditative counterpoint to her tension. Rex's run was visible from the armory window, the dog pacing restlessly, sensing her unrest through the glass. Loyalty like his didn't question. It amplified, a mirror to the conscience pulling her deeper into defiance. By midday, the drones launched with a whine, their shadows skimming the scrub. Elena monitored from the ops feed, her station peripheral, but the tracker in her pocket synced silently. The Arroyo site, unmarked on official grids, pulsed with activity. The signal had moved again, urban vector, evading the aerial sweep. Hale's frustration built in clipped updates, the room's air thickening with unspoken pressure. In the quiet of the handler break area, Reyes found her later. Leaning against the doorframe, a water bottle in hand. "Drones miss something," he said quietly, eyes on the horizon. "You know more." She hesitated, the bond of trust tipping the scale. Secondary site, East Ridge. Russian markings, active transfer. Data's partial, points inland. Reyes exhaled slowly, rubbing his neck. "Hale'll have my ass if this blows sideways. But if it's a pattern..." He trailed off, the weight of command shared in silence. Feed it to Intel anonymously. Cover us both. The suggestion eased the knot in her chest, a bridge back toward order without full surrender. Elena nodded, the moral tension coiling tighter. Integrity demanded exposure, but timed right, it could reform the response, turn defiance into duty. As the afternoon wore on, the base thrummed with heightened vigilance, extra patrols, radio checks crackling with alerts. Elena walked Rex on a short lead near the kennels, his fur warm under the sun, the dog's steady gait a reminder of unyielding partnership. The signal's shadow loomed, a test not just of her resolve, but of the system's blind spots. Hale's orders held the line, her actions tested its strength. Evening approached with a cooling breeze off the water, carrying the salt tang that promised storms. In the ops center, as logs closed for the day, Elena slipped the encrypted drive into an anonymous drop, untraceable, factual. The reckoning edged closer, the fracture in chain of command widening under the weight of what was right. Rex's distant bark echoed once, a call to vigilance. As the sun dipped low, painting the base in long, unyielding shadows, the night watch settled over Coronado like a taut security blanket, the base's floodlights carving stark pools of white against the encroaching dark. Elena Vasquez lay on her bunk, the thin mattress unyielding under her frame, staring at the acoustic tiles overhead. The anonymous drop had been clean, slipped into the Intel secure box during shift change, no fingerprints, no logs. But sleep evaded her, the tracker's final sync replaying in her mind, the signal's urban vector threading towards San Diego's industrial fringe, a ghost trail that Intel's drones had overlooked. Rex's bark from earlier lingered in her ears, a rhythmic echo through the vents, grounding her in the quiet hours when doubt gnawed deepest. At 0200, her secure line buzzed, a text from an unlisted number. Anomaly confirmed. East Ridge site active. Briefing 600. Stand by. No signature, but Reyes's influence was clear in the brevity. She exhaled slowly, the air in her quarters stale with the faint mildew of bay humidity. The Master Chief's cover extended further than she'd expected, a silent extension of the loyalty that bound the platoon. Yet Hale's warning coiled tighter. Rogue action threatened not just her, but the team's cohesion, the invisible threads of trust that held operators through the fog of war. Dawn filtered through the narrow window, grey and insistent, as Elena geared up for the brief. Rex waited in the handler bay adjacent to ops, his run door ajar for the morning handoff. She clipped his leash, feeling the familiar tension in his lead as they moved through the corridors, boots echoing softly on linoleum worn smooth by countless patrols. The dog's warmth pressed against her leg, a steady pulse against the chill of uncertainty. In the teams, partners like Rex didn't judge. They amplified resolve, his unerring nose a mirror to the instincts orders sometimes stifled. The ops center hummed with pre-dawn efficiency, screens flickering to life, the low murmur of coffee machines and encrypted radios. Hale stood at the head of the conference table, maps projected in holographic blue, the Intel Major at his side with fresh printouts. Reyes leaned against the wall, arms crossed, his face a study in neutral vigilance. Elena entered with Rex at heel, saluting before taking her assigned seat at the table's edge. The room smelled of fresh ink and machine heat, the air conditioning whispering cool drafts across her neck. "Platoon leads only," Hale began, his voice clipped, eyes scanning the sparse group, Reyes, the Major, Elena, and 2 EOD techs. Anonymous tip came in overnight. Secondary device, East Ridge Arroyo, matches the initial profile, Russian commercial encrypt, burst transmission. He tapped the projection, zooming on coordinates Elena knew by heart. Drones missed it. Ground teams deploying at 700. Vasquez, your K9's on point, but this stays official. No deviations. Aye, sir, Elena replied, her tone even, masking the flicker of relief. The drop had worked, pulling the breach into the light without exposing her hand. Rex sat alert beside her, ears perked at the shift in tension, his presence a subtle anchor. Hale's gaze lingered, probing, as if sensing the fracture beneath her composure. The colonel paced once, the squeak of his polished boots the only irregularity in the room's rhythm. The major cleared his throat, sliding a tablet across. Data fragment from the tip, urban relay pattern. Could be mapping base traffic, vehicles, helos. If it's a net, we're blind on the endgame. His eyes met Elena's, neutral but appraising. Handler input critical. Rex's track record speaks for itself. She nodded, scrolling the schematics, her own download, anonymized and scrubbed. The moral weight eased fractionally. Sharing through back channels preserved the chain while honoring conscience. But Hale's next words tightened it again. Petty officer, post-drill yesterday. Your log shows kennel time. Witnesses place you near the perimeter. Care to clarify? The room stilled, Reyes' posture unchanging but his jaw set. Elena held Hale's stare, the seconds stretching like a held breath before a dive. Routine maintenance, sir. Rex needed a rundown check after the alert. Truth layered over omission, procedural as a field report. The colonel's aviators reflected the screen's glow, unreadable. But the silence pressed, a test of the invisible line she'd towed. Hale exhaled sharply. See that it stays routine. This breach hits the battalion command by noon. If it's linked to foreign actors, eyes from JSOC downward. No scandals. He dismissed the group with a curt wave, the major gathering printouts as operators filed out. Outside, the morning fog clung to the tarmac, muffling the rev of Humvees, prepping for the sweep. Eleanor walked Rex to the staging area, the leash taut in her grip. His paws padding steadily beside her. Reyes fell in step, voice low amid the gathering team. Tip bought time, Vasquez. But Hale's circling. If he ties it to you... Won't happen, Master Chief. She cut in, eyes on the horizon where the ridge loomed through the mist. Rex and I finish this clean. For the team. He nodded once, clapping her shoulder with a gloved hand, brief, fraternal. Copy. Watch your angles. The concession deepened their pact, loyalty threading through the ranks like rebar in concrete. The ground team rolled out at 0700, two Tahoes bouncing over the scrub, Elena and Rex in the lead vehicle with the EOD lead. The arroyo unfolded before them, shale and manzanita stark under the lifting fog, the air sharp with sage and damp earth. Rex deployed first, off-leash, quartering the site with mechanical precision, nose low, body weaving through the brush. Elena followed, carbine at low ready, the tracker synced to her wrist, confirming the device's heat signature. Contact! She called softly into the radio as Rex stiffened at the crevice. The team fanned out, tech sweeping for traps, the major documenting with a body cam. The black box sat as she'd left it, antenna inert now, but the downloaded burst had confirmed the relay chain. 3 points, the last vanishing into the city's grid. EOD extracted it carefully, gloved hands maneuvering like surgeons. The faint click of tools, the only sound breaking the wind's hush. Back at base by 1000, the find escalated. Battalion command looped in, a secure video feed from Pendleton crackling with brass queries. Hale debriefed in the ops center, the room crowded now. Additional intel from NCIS, faces grim under fluorescent glare. Elena stood at parade rest, Rex at her side, as the colonel outlined the chain. 3 devices confirmed, pattern suggests surveillance on rotations. Source unknown, but the encrypt's GRU grade, Russian military surplus. Murmurs rippled. Operators exchanging glances. The breach personal now, shadows on their next deployment. Hale turned to Elena. Vasquez, your detection initiated this. Good work. But the anonymous tip, internal leak or coincidence? Her pulse steadied, the room's eyes on her like spotlights. Coincidence, sir. Rex's nose doesn't lie. The half-truth held, but the Major's nod from across the table signaled alliance. The data had filled gaps, steering the probe without credit. As the brief wrapped, Hale pulled her aside in the corridor, the door to ops clicking shut. The hallway echoed with distant bootfalls, the air cooler here laced with the tang of floor polish. "Petty officer, level with me. This tip smells like insider track. If you're holding cards, it ends now, before NCIS digs." "Sir, all I have is Rex's alert and the sweep," she said, saluting, her voice level as planking steel. Conscience warred silently. Full disclosure could clear her, but expose the defiance, fracturing trust. Hale studied her, then waved her off, dismissed, but eyes on you. The day ground on, patrols doubled, the base's rhythm tightening like a spring. Elena walked Rex through the kennels at dusk, the sun sinking in a blaze over the Pacific, casting long shadows across the runs. His fur brushed her hand, warm and reassuring, the bond a quiet rebuke to isolation. The signals unraveling promised reform, tighter perimeter scans, handler integration in intel ops, but the personal cost loomed. Hale's scrutiny a gathering storm. In the evening, chow whispers circulated, the breach making rounds in the mess, operators toasting Rex's nose over steaming trays. Reyes slid into the seat across from her, fork pausing mid-air. "NCIS inbound tomorrow. Hale's pushing for source on the tip. You set?" "Aye," she replied, the chili's spice burning her throat. The fracture widened. Moral courage tested in the glare of institutional eyes, but Rex's distant whine from the kennels called her forward, loyalty's unyielding pull in the gathering dark. The fluorescent lights of the ops center buzzed like distant rotors as the evening brief dragged into overtime, the air heavy with the scent of cooling electronics and half-empty coffee mugs. Elena Vasquez stood at the back wall, arms crossed loosely, her utilities still carrying the faint dust of the Arroyo sweep. Rex lay at her feet, his flanks rising and falling in even rhythm, oblivious to the tension coiling through the room. Lieutenant Colonel Hale paced the front, his pointer tapping the projected map with sharp authority, outlining the relay chain's implications. 3 devices now catalogued, each a potential vector for eyes on SEAL movements. "NCIS arrives at 0800, Hale announced, his voice cutting through the low murmurs of the assembled leads. "Full audit, logs, timestamps, anonymous channels. This isn't a loose end, it's a threat profile. Any stone unturned gets flipped." His gaze swept the group, settling on Elena with the precision of a targeting laser. She held still, chin level, the weight of the thumb drive's echo in her boot a phantom pressure. The anonymous drop had integrated seamlessly into the intel feed, directing the probe without fingerprints, but Hale's scrutiny suggested cracks forming. Reyes shifted beside her, his boot nudging hers subtly, a silent check-in. The Master Chief's pact had held through the day, his influence threading the tip into official channels without alarm, but as the group dispersed, Hale's voice halted her at the door. "Vasquez, a word." She turned, saluting crisply in the emptying corridor, the echo of departing footsteps fading into the hum of ventilation. Rex sat alert at her heel, his ears flicking at the colonel's tone. Hale closed the distance, aviators tucked into his pocket, revealing eyes etched with fatigue and resolve. The hallway's cool draft carried the distant tang of ocean salt through an open vent, a reminder of the base's unyielding perimeter. "Petty officer, this tip's too clean. Coordinates exact, data scrubbed but actionable, smells like ground truth, not satellite guesswork." Hale's words were measured, not accusatory, but the subtext pressed like a gloved hand on a shoulder. "If you're the source, own it now. Chain of command protects the team. Freelancing fractures it." Elena's pulse remained steady, trained response overriding the knot in her gut. "Sir, my lane's detection and sweep. Rex flagged it, I reported." The omission lingered, Procedural truth layered over the defiance that had driven her into the scrub. Loyalty to the platoon demanded the full picture, but confession could unravel her role, reassign Rex to a handler without their shared history. The quiet nights in fobs, where his nose had mapped safe paths through minefields. Hale studied her, the silence stretching taut as a patrol wire. Dismissed. But NCIS asks questions. You answer straight. No games. He pivoted away, boots clicking on the linoleum, leaving her with the echo of command's rigid spine. Back in the kennels under the sodium lamp's yellow glow, Elena ran a brush through Rex's coat, the bristles whispering against his fur, releasing the day's scents of shale and sage. The runs were quiet now, other handlers off shift, the only sounds the drip of a leaky faucet and Rex's contented huff. She knelt, meeting his gaze. Dark, unwavering, a bond forged beyond words or ranks. "We did right, boy," she murmured, her hand steady on his ruff. The dog's head tilted, pressing into her touch, trust unmarred by the human tangle of orders and inquiries. Sleep came fitfully in her quarters, the bunk's frame creaking under her restless shifts, dreams fragmented by signal pulses and Hale's stare. Dawn arrived with a low marine layer blanketing the base, muffling the Reveille bugle to a distant wail. Elena geared up methodically, utilities pressed, boots laced tight, before heading to the staging area. Rex trotted beside her, leash loose, his paws padding softly on the dew-slicked path. The air held the crisp bite of fog, carrying hints of diesel from idling NCIS vans already parked at the gate. The investigators arrived precisely at 0800, two agents in crisp polos and slacks, badges glinting under the lifting mist, flanked by base security. Hale met them in the ops conference room, the space transformed into a sterile inquiry hub, laptops open, whiteboards scrawled with timelines. Elena was called in third, after Reyes and the EOD lead, entering with Rex at heel. The senior agent, a compact woman with a no-nonsense bun, gestured to a chair. "Petty Officer Vasquez, walk us through your involvement, from detection to sweep." She recounted it linearly. Rex's alert in the mock village, the RF confirmation, the stand-down order. Her voice stayed level, facts marching like a platoon drill, no embellishment, no gaps beyond the Arroyo omission. The agent nodded, tapping notes into a tablet, her partner observing from the corner, eyes flicking between Elena and Rex. "And the anonymous tip? Any knowledge?" "Negative, ma'am," Elena replied, her hand resting lightly on Rex's head, feeling the warmth of his skull under her palm. The dog's stillness amplified the room's tension, his presence a subtle testament to the instinct that had propelled her actions. The junior agent leaned forward, voice probing. "Logs show you near the perimeter post stand down. Handler maintenance? Witnesses vague. Routine with Rex, sir. Post-alert protocol." Elena met his gaze. The lie's weight familiar now. A shield for the moral pivot that had traced the signal's shadow. Outside, the fog thinned, revealing the grinder where operators formed up for PT, their shouts muffled but rhythmic, a counterpoint to the room's scrutiny. The session ended after 40 minutes, the agents dismissing her with a nod. "We'll reconvene if needed." As she exited, Reyes waited in the hall, his expression unreadable amid the passing foot traffic, techs hauling gear, a radio crackling with patrol checks. "They grilled me on the tip's origin," he said quietly, falling in step toward the kennels. "Hale's feeding them timelines, if they pull your off-books logs." "Clean," she assured, though doubt flickered. The base thrummed with heightened protocol, extra checkpoints, handlers on double watch, the air electric with unspoken vigilance. By midday, word spread through the chow line. NCIS pulling records, the breach now battalion level, whispers of JSOC oversight rippling like aftershocks. In the armory during afternoon quals, the tension broke visibly. A junior operator, fresh from Bud S, with a chip on his shoulder, cornered her at the cleaning bench, rods clacking against rifle bores. "Heard you're the ghost on that tip, Vasquez. Going solo with the dog? Ballsy for a woman handler." His tone edged mockery, eyes darting to the watching squad, curiosity laced with the unit's undercurrent skepticism toward her pipeline breach. Elena set down her boar snake, voice clipped. "Focus on your zero, Seaman. My lane's Rex and the mission." Rex, tethered nearby, rose with a low rumble, hackles lifting at the shift in her posture. The operator backed off, muttering, but the exchange drew eyes, Reyes across the bench, his glare silencing further jabs. Hale arrived unannounced minutes later, the armory door swinging with purpose. "Vasquez, front!" The room hushed, tools pausing mid-motion. He stood under the harsh lights, uniform impeccable, the weight of command filling the space. "NCIS has your perimeter log flagged. Care to explain before it escalates to formal inquiry?" The platoon watched, breaths held, the scent of solvent sharp in the air. Elena rose, saluting, Rex at her side like a sentinel. "Sir, it was a check on Rex's alert residual, no deviation." The half-truth hung exposed now, the moral fracture public, defiance laid bare under institutional gaze. Hale's jaw tightened, but his response came measured. "Tribunal prep starts tomorrow if discrepancies hold. Stand down from active duties pending review." He turned to the group. "This breach tests us all. Loyalty means truth, not shadows." The words rippled outward, a reckoning that bound the unit in shared scrutiny, Elena's actions sparking the probe's reform even as they threatened her place. As the armory resumed its rhythm, whispers ignited, respect for the track, wariness of the cost. Elena walked Rex out into the afternoon sun, the Pacific wind gusting salt across the tarmac, his lead steady in her grip. The institution's response loomed, investigation tightening like a noose, but in Rex's unwavering step, the legacy of conscience endured, a quiet force against the rigid order. If this story already has your respect, hit the like button. It helps the story of Elena Vasquez reach those who still believe in honor. The morning sun pierced the marine layer over Coronado, casting fractured light across the tribunal room's polished oak table. Elena Vasquez stood at attention in her dress blues, the wool crisp against her skin, medals pinned in precise rows that caught the glare from the high windows. Rex sat motionless beside her, his service vest gleaming. The dog's presence a regulated exception to protocol. Handlers testified with their partners, a nod to the bond that blurred lines between human and canine in the teams. The air held the faint polish of waxed floors and the underlying staleness of closed doors. The room's walls lined with faded unit plaques, bearing names from deployments long buried. Lieutenant Colonel Hale presided at the head, flanked by two senior officers from Battalion Command, a grizzled captain from Pendleton and a major from NCIS, their faces etched with the impartiality of inquiry. Master Chief Reyes sat to the side as witness, his utilities starched but his posture relaxed, a subtle anchor in the formal tension. The NCIS agents from the day before hovered at the periphery, tablets at the ready, their presence a reminder that this wasn't just internal, it was the institution's self-examination under a microscope. "Vasquez," Hale began, his voice steady as a briefing read, "this tribunal addresses discrepancies in your actions post-detection of the RF anomaly, perimeter logs, handler entries, and the anonymous tip's alignment with your movements. State your account." "Aye, sir," Elena replied, eyes forward, her tone clipped and procedural. She recounted the sequence without flourish, Rex's initial alert, the stand-down, the routine check that had led her to the Arroyo, framed now as an instinctive follow-up, not defiance. The downloaded data, she admitted, came from that site, shared anonymously to accelerate the probe. No evasion, just the facts laid bare like a field-stripped weapon. Rex shifted once, his paw scraping faintly on the tile, a soft underscore to her words. The captain leaned forward, reviewing a printout of signal traces. Your initiative uncovered the relay chain. 3 devices confirmed GRU surplus. Intel's now mapping a full network, averting potential compromise on rotations. His gaze softened fractionally, the weight of consequence evident. But protocol demands chain of command. Explain the deviation. Elena met his eyes, the room's silence amplifying the distant hum of a helo on the pad outside. Sir, orders recused me, but Rex's detection indicated mobility. Delay risked the trace. My intent was the team's security, duty over personal standing. The moral pivot hung there, unadorned. Obedience clashed with the quiet imperative to protect, forged in the losses of patrols, where signals like this had turned allies into targets. Hale's fingers drummed once on the table, a rare tell. The tip integrated without breach. Probes expanded to urban vectors, NCIS coordinating with FBI. Your action sparked that. He paused, glancing at Reyes, who nodded imperceptibly. But freelancing erodes trust. The institution learns from fractures. Petty officer, not ignores them. The major from NCIS interjected, voice neutral. No criminal intent found. Logs align with heightened vigilance post-alert. Recommendation, formal reprimand, but retain operational status. Handler K9 integration merits review. Elevate their role in intel sweeps. Murmurs rippled softly, the officers conferring in low tones. The scratch of pens on paper the only interruption. Elena stood unmoving, Rex's warmth a steady pressure against her boot, his loyalty a counter to the scrutiny. The wind gusted outside, rattling the window frames, carrying the salt bite of the bay into the room like an uninvited witness. Hale cleared his throat, reconvening attention. Tribunal finds procedural lapse, reprimand on record, 30-day probation on independent ops, but commendation for the detection chain. Vasquez, your conscience served the unit. Learn from it. Report deviations up the line. His tone held no warmth, but the ruling carried reform's edge, a crack in the rigid hierarchy, allowing handlers like her a formalized voice. Dismissed, he added, the gavel's tap echoing like a final radio check. Elena saluted, crisp and formal, then led Rex from the room, the door clicking shut behind them. The corridor stretched empty, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, the base's pulse resuming beyond. Boots on gravel, the low growl of engines firing up for afternoon quals. Reyes caught up in the hallway, falling in step without a word until they reached the kennel block's shadowed entrance. Clean outcome, he said quietly, the air inside thick with the musk of straw and water bowls. Hale pushed for light touch. Your track record and the breach's scope swayed it. But probation means eyes on you. Use it. Mentor the juniors on K9 lanes. Aye, Master Chief, Elena replied, unclipping Rex's vest, her fingers lingering on the leather. The dog's tail thumped once against the concrete, a subtle release. The reprimand stung, a mark on her file that could shadow promotions, but the legacy unfolded broader. NCIS briefings now included handler protocols, Rex's alerts cited in training modules, her defiance transmuted into systemic shift. Women in the teams, still proving ground, gained ground through such quiet reckonings. Word spread through the unit by evening chow, the mess deck alive with the clatter of trays and measured talk. Operators nodded as she passed, respect in the glances, no jabs from the junior who'd mocked her before. Heard the dog's nose saved the rotation, one said, sliding a seat her way. Elena took it, the steam from her tray rising like battlefield fog. Conversation turning to the probe's progress, urban sweeps netting a fourth device, the network unraveling without a shot fired. Hale appeared briefly at the officer's end, his tray simple, but his path crossed hers on the way out. "Vasquez," he said, pausing amid the hum. "Tribunals closed, but the lessons open. Chain of command includes input from the line, handlers too. Keep it tight." The concession was subtle, a reform's first thread, born of her stand. Night settled over the base, the floodlights pooling silver on the wet tarmac from a passing shower. Elena walked Rex along the perimeter path, the leash loose in her hand, his paws whispering on the damp gravel. The Pacific murmured beyond the wire, waves breaking in rhythmic hush, the air cool with rain's aftermath. Probation loomed, a tether to stricter lanes. But the transformation rooted deeper. Her integrity had exposed vulnerabilities, sparking protocols that wove canine instincts into the institution's fabric. Loyalty not just to orders, but to the unseen threats they guarded against. In the kennels, as she secured Rex for the night, his eyes met hers in the dim light, unwavering. The bond held, a symbol of moral strength amid the rank's unyielding order, where conscience quietly reshaped the whole. The base lights dimmed to standby, leaving only the stars' faint gleam and the dog's steady breath, a legacy of courage etched in discipline's enduring line. Subscribe for more stories of loyalty, courage, and justice within the ranks. Thank you for watching the case of You're Off This Case. Woodin, the colonel barked, but the woman SEAL was already tracking the signal. See you in the next one.